Hey everybody, this is Chris, and today I have a very special message for you. People on YouTube are influencers, so I don't ever really think of myself as an influencer because I more do tutorials and tech than anything else. But I'm going to try to influence you not to update your firmware just because they say there's a firmware update. We're going to specifically talk about Hubsan. I've got the Xeno Pro Plus right here. Just so you can see, Xeno Pro Plus, and I have the Xeno 2 Plus. So both of these quads are the newest models of the Xenos, and my Xeno 2 Plus I have updated one time. I don't know if there's been a firmware update since then, but my Xeno Pro Plus I have never updated. Whatever firmware version's on that is exactly what it came with. I've flown it and it flies fine. There is no reason for me to update my firmware. Plus it's winter time, it's cold, it's snowing. I'm not doing my normal type of flights where I'm out flying real close to treetops or flying up rivers real close to the water and the rocks where stability is key for me. So I have not been able to fully test that type of stuff right there. So I do not want to go and change things without knowing what I have first. So right now, the way I have been flying with just short flights out in the cold winter, it's perfectly fine. There is no reason for me to update it. So I've never updated my Pro Plus. But we're going to turn it on and let it sync, and then we'll connect to the app. But the whole purpose of this video is just to tell you not to update your firmware, when to update your firmware, and what mistakes you can make if you do update your firmware. So when you're in these Facebook groups and you see there's a new firmware update, don't go rush and grab your quad and controller, connect them, and just download it and not know what you're downloading. If you're on YouTube and you see some clown in Idaho out fumbling around with his Xeno 2 Plus and it does a perfect precise landing and that's what makes him so happy and says, oh, it's a great firmware update. That's the most stable I've ever seen this quad. Don't do that firmware update. You're the owner of the quad. You test it, you fly it, you decide if it makes you happy and if it's working properly for you. If it's not working properly for you, there's usually other reasons why, not a firmware update. So let's open up the app. I've already got my controller on, the quad's on, and open up the app, Xeno Pro Plus, enter main interface, and it's probably going to tell me how to install my battery. Yeah, I got it. All right, so now we have a prompt. You can't read it, but I'll read it to you. And it's not big enough to where I'm even going to put forth the energy to pop it up on the screen and show it to you. I'll read it. The latest FC version Xeno Pro Plus, FC version 0.1.24 can be updated and used. Update content. Optimize the flight return mechanism. What is that? Optimize the flight return mechanism. What is that? Now, if I made that my question of the day, I would get several different answers. So maybe I should leave it at that and say, what do you guys think that is? And do you need it? But I'll go ahead and tell you what I think it is. It can be a number of things. Flight return mechanism. It could be how it records your home point when you first take off. So when you return home, it's more precise. It can be the exact, it could be the precise landing feature maybe. It doesn't say precise landing, so we're going to rule that one out maybe. But it could be something like it's not recording your home point properly or as accurately, which would be more of like a GPS update to your firmware. It could be a fail-safe update. If you have a disconnect and the fail-safe is to return to home, they could have tweaked that somehow. It could be something like that. Could be that when it returns home, it's landing 15 feet away from you every time, and they've made it to where it's locked in a little bit better and it's more accurate. I don't know. But the point of this is, it's really no big wow factor. It's nothing that's grabbing me. It's not saying, hey, I have to update this. I'm not going to risk it, because I also know in the background they've gone and punched a few parameters and changed this and that, and usually they call those known bugs. Fix some known bugs. I don't know what those known bugs are. Mine's flying fine. But they say there's bugs, so I'm going to update my firmware. Don't do it. Please don't do it. Let me turn this off so it's quiet. But actually, before I do that, I'll tell you what version I have. So they were telling me update to 2.4. My version is 0.1.15. So that's what was on it when I got it, and that's what's staying on it for now. I am not updating this latest version. So now we'll turn it off so we don't have to listen to the fan, and I'll tell you when the time to update is. Let's say they never had precise landing, and then they announce new firmware update, new feature, precise landing. That excites a lot of people. I'm not crazy about it because I catch mine. I do like it to land somewhere in a 6-foot parameter. I can walk over a little bit, reach out, and catch it. But let's say precise landing is what rocks your world, and you have to have it. Let it get a little dust on it. See what other people are doing. Watch YouTube influencers and see how they're doing with it. Now, for me to test a feature like that and show you, I'm going to do it repeatedly. I'm going to constantly land, and test that precise landing. If it does it every single time, that's a great new feature. That excites people. People are going to want to do that update. But you also want to make sure that video quality hasn't been affected, stability hasn't been affected, the signal strengths. They're known to up that and drop it. They'll up that signal strength, and you'll get some really great range and not much interference. And then as soon as people start saying, I've had a flyaway, it disconnected, I had interference and it flew away, as soon as they start seeing that, they start dropping that signal. Because if you go too high with signal strength, you're actually more prone to pick up interference with other surrounding buildings and people's, I guess, Wi-Fi and electronics and stuff like that. So having a real high power output is not a great thing. So they are constantly adjusting that. Not constantly, but it's pretty common that they would adjust that. So you don't know about these updates because usually they call them known bugs and stuff like that. So you see this new feature and you have to have it. Make sure that you just wait on it a little bit. You don't need to be the first guy to have it. It'll still be there tomorrow. It'll still be there next week. See what other people are saying that you can trust. See how it's responding for them. Watch actual videos on it. If they say that, this really weird thing happened on my return to home, and it did it again yesterday, it did it today, I wouldn't be rushing to update that firmware. If you see multiple people saying the same things, there's usually an issue there, and then there will be another update to follow to fix that. So the other reason not to update your firmware is, say on the Xeno 2 you lose your FPV. That's not a reason to update your firmware. That means something's broken on the quad. It's usually the ribbon cable from the board to the gimbal. You need to replace that cable, see if you get your FPV back, and figure out what's going on there. If you try to go and update that firmware with that cable being broken, I'm just using that as an example, but if you try to update your firmware with that broken cable, when it goes to do an IT update, which is your camera, it's not going to recognize the camera, the update's going to freeze, and then you have a big problem. Then next thing you know, you hear people saying that, oh, I can't connect to my controller anymore. The update failed. It won't connect to the controller. Now I can't try to update the firmware again. Well, it's because it's not technically bricked. The term bricked would be done, but it's temporarily bricked, and then you need to go through a recovery process and all that, and it's just a headache. You don't need to do that. So if you have lost, if that's one of your issues, you've lost FPV, that's not a reason to update. If you do an auto launch and then it drifts off to one side and then stops and then drifts off to this side, that's not a reason to do an update. If it's been flying fine every time you went out, and then the next few times you go out, it does odd things like that, that's a calibration. If you get into toilet bowl issues, that's not a firmware update, that's a calibration. So it's key that you know how to tune your quad and know what to do to fix certain situations. So if it's drifting like that, usually that's a horizontal IMU calibration. If you're getting toilet bowls, it's compass calibration. It's tuning your quad, and that will fix those flight characteristics. So many times you see somebody say, my quad, it flew fine yesterday. I took it out today, and then when I go straight, it flies like this. Do a calibration. Do your calibration. When it flies off like that, that's usually something to do with your geomagnetic compass. It not knowing it's true north, south, what have it. Or it could be something to do with the barometer, to where you need to do a horizontal or an IMU calibration and zero out all the perimeters. But the key is, when you are doing those calibrations, that you actually know how to do them and you're doing them properly. Horizontal calibration, sometimes I see people say, yeah, I do horizontal calibration before every flight. So you're setting it on the ground. That ground could be tilted a little bit, and then you do a horizontal calibration. That's not a good calibration. You want to do that at home, indoors, away from any electronics or anything. Don't even have your controller up on top of it. Stand back a little bit. Make sure it's a flat, level surface. You're not bumping it, hitting it, vibrating it. Do the horizontal calibration. It'll zero out all the parameters and tell the quad, hey, this is level. If you do it on a tilted surface, it's going to tell the quad, hey, this is level. And then it's not going to fly good for you. So things like that are what fix your flight characteristics, not so much a firmware update. If it flew fine yesterday, it's not flying great today, it's usually one of your calibrations. Or you might have something mechanical wrong, but firmware is not the magic wand that's going to fix everything for you. So if you want to keep your quad flying and keep it up in the air, don't update your firmware unless it's something that you just absolutely have to have, or it's got lousy camera quality and they put out a camera update and then you see other people doing videos on it and you see that actual video quality improving. That's when you do a firmware update. So us bozos here on YouTube, if we go out and do a 15-minute video on a firmware update and the only thing you see good in that video is it did one good precise landing, don't do the firmware update. How many times have I said don't do the firmware update in this video? So that's where I'll end it. I'm not updating my Xeno Pro Plus. It flies fine. I'm going to wait till weather's good. I'm going to get out there and fly it the way I normally fly it and piss the FAA off and all the little drone police out there, and fly my style. And that's a good test for the quad as far as I'm concerned, because I like to get down tight and low. I need a good stable quad to do a lot of the things I do, and flying close to the water and creeks and rivers and rocks and things like that. So I'm not going to update these probably till spring. And you haven't seen any content from me on these two, because who really wants to see me go out there and fly out in the snow and the cold and no color. It's such a dreary place to live in the wintertime. It's all gray, obviously no leaves on the trees, the water's frozen. So it's really not any great content. I really wanted to do some battery tests for you guys, but with the cold temperatures, that's not a good test. That's not a fair test, because we all know in the cold weather our flight times are going to be less. So that's it. I just mainly wanted to say, don't go updating your firmware just because it's there. It's not a piece of candy. You gotta have it. Leave it alone. Leave it alone. So my saying is, let it get a little dust on it. Put it aside. Get it out of your head. If it ain't broke, don't F with it. And just keep yourself flying and happy. And don't create your own problems, because that's what's going to happen. So hopefully this has influenced some of you. So when you see somebody say, hey, I need to update my firmware, ask them why. Ask them how their quad's flying. Share this video. But usually they'll say, it's fine, no problems, but I have an old version. And then educate them. Tell them if it's fine, leave it alone. But just tell them they can update the firmware. They can create problems they did not have. So let's not increase the probability of problems or crashes or bricking with these quads. That's it. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. And thank you all for watching. Hit that thumbs up on your way out. If you're new to my channel, subscribe. And as always, hit that bell for future content and notification. And peace and love. Take care.